and writing grants. Total anticipated cost will be less than $150,000 for year one. The goal for year one would be to generate at least that $150,000 in donation and grants so that the office begins paying for itself from year one. The second item is the addition of a restroom in Maroney Park. It'll be $150,000. This is where the splash pad will be built because of the efforts of POW. Initially, because of how tight the budget was, it wasn't appropriated, and then when the bids on the lights for the baseball field came in quite a bit lower than anticipated, then that freed up money to put in what I consider to be a high priority restroom in our parks. There are other needs in the parks, but we also hope that if the development office is approved, that this will be one of their tasks, and that is to raise funds for additional improvements in the park. Some miscellaneous comments. City Council will have 9 meetings before the budget is finally adopted, to where you discuss certain elements of the budget. 1 penny generates about $150,000 per year, 1 penny in property tax. Sales tax per capita, and this is one of the calculations that we do to compare to other cities, is $183 per citizen. When we looked at the average homeowner pays $533 a year in property taxes, and then compare that to some other items, you can get a gist of the value of what it is that we get for the property tax as well as the sales tax. The one item that I'm going to point out one item I'll point out because Sherry said that I had to, or she would hurt me after the meeting, and that is that we have calculations that were provided by an outside source that said the value of tourism and convention to a property taxpayer in Nacogdoches County is $310. And so what they're suggesting, if we didn't have the tourism and convention industry in our community, you could be paying $310 more per year. Those numbers on what your annualized costs are on cable TV, a cell phone, those are debatable. You can spend less, you can spend a whole lot more, and then the city utilities, that's just simply a average. That really has no purpose other than to emphasize the value of what you get for your tax dollars. Madam Mayor, with that, I'll step aside for public comment, and then I'll return for additional discussion.
Is there anyone that would like to say anything? Yes, Ms. Cartwright, come on up.
Brandy Cartwright, and is that all I need to say? Okay. I just want to put out there that I am all for the addition of the $150,000 for the Maroney splash pad, or the Maroney restrooms. It is very needed. It is something that we hear every single time we are out at the park. We've done various surveys, random surveys, done by a high school student, actually. And I'm sure some of you guys have probably seen those, but it's definitely needed. So I appreciate the city looking and figuring out how to make that work. So thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? This will be your last chance. Okay. Public comment is closed then. Council, do you have any questions, thoughts, comments for Mr. Jeffers? And if not, then we can talk about making a motion for approval.
Madam Mayor, we're looking for
Three different.
2 votes before you consider adopting the budget, and ask that you look at those separately. One is the restroom for Maroney Park of $150,000, and the second item is the development office for $150,000.
Okay. So, it will be council's choice, if someone would like to make a motion, so we can discuss the bathrooms, I guess, first at Maroney Park.
I make a motion to approve the $150,000 for the restroom at Verona Park.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion, questions? Okay. Well, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. And then for the development office, is there a motion for that? Or any questions, further questions before we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we appropriate $150,000 for the development office.
I second that motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I just say I won't support the motion because I don't think I haven't seen enough research from other communities doing that, and I just think when municipal governments begin to encroach upon the funding sources for not-for-profit organizations, it's not a great idea, and so I won't support the development office.
Okay. Any other comments? I would like to say in the recent past, our city's been very fortunate to have citizens that have stepped forward. We had $1 million given to the city for a project. Mr. Charles Bright, even though he created a foundation for the city, the actual city of Nacogdoches has been the recipient of some grants. And then we had the Parks Advocacy League, which came together and raised money for a city project. So clearly there are people that are willing to give their money for projects that the city has difficulty in funding. And my feeling is if we have someone that's dedicated to identifying these, creating them, cultivating and developing those types of gifts, research grants, partnering with individuals, businesses, other organizations, I'm confident we'll recoup the monies for the office, and it will grow after that, year after year. Recently, the council was asked, actually I think he said challenged, by someone who spoke in open forum for us to be a little more creative in finding new revenue sources, and I think this is a great way for us to start.
Did we at one time have a grant writer?
We still have a grant writer who does primarily grant administration. So if we have this office, this individual will be, well, we'll put more resources towards identifying grants, which is not an easy task nowadays, but it is entirely possible, and these 2 individuals will be collaborating on the grants.
Oh, okay. So basically, the person that we hire will have some type of expertise in grant writing.
We hope so, but when we actually write a job description, that's going to be a desired quality or an asset, but whether or not you'll find that individual, time will tell.
Thank you.
Having been involved in grant writing myself, sometimes you have a person that researches and finds the grants, and then someone with a little different kind of skill set
Right.
actually writes
Write the
them.
grant, yeah, okay.
Sometimes, so.
You
sometimes
hired.
they can be both. Oh, yeah, right. Oh, okay. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes.
Madam Mayor, just for
Yes.
the record, I'm going to point out that Councilmember Hens, Bolden, Mayor Brophy, and Anderson voted for the budget. Oh, excuse me, never mind, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yes, we'll do that on the next.
Strike that.
Okay.
when you do the budget adoption, do a roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. So, we are now going to approve and adopt the main budget. So we will need a motion and a second for that, please.
I'll make a motion, we approve the main budget.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded with the approve and adopt the annual budget for fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018. Are there any further discussion?
I've put a lot of thought into this, and I'm not going to support this motion. There's two simple reasons. It has nothing to do with the quality of the budget, the way it's laid out. It's excellent work. Pam's done a fantastic job. But I made two proposals where we could have saved, I believe, $1.5 million. You know, one associated with the belt press building, the other with the centrifuge. That would have paid for 10 restrooms out at Maroney Park, and that was ignored. And the other one is the city council, and thus the citizens were not, as I see it, really involved in the preparation of the budget. We did hear it. We did have a workshop, but that was after the public hearings had been set, and is my belief that the most important document that we do should be involved from the beginning with citizen input. So I will not support it. And those comments also go for the next two items, and I won't say anything on those.
Okay. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those, I will. Oh, do the roll call.
Yeah, do the roll call.
Okay. Mr. Hens?
Aye.
Mr. Bolden?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 6, consider ordinance ratifying and setting the tax rate on all taxable property for year 2018.
Madam Mayor, the proposed tax rate is 61.69 cents. The existing rate, I can't see that far. Oh, well, I'll find it. No, I won't. What's the existing rate? Thank you. I was waiting for you to save me, Pam. With the average single-family home with a value of $86,400, that means that they're going to be paying $20.82 more per year. And on this particular item, Madam Mayor, when you reach the point to where you'll consider a motion, we have provided you with the specific language that is suggested by the Texas Municipal League to make sure that we're in compliance with the law. You cannot increase the rate higher than what has been proposed, but you certainly can consider a rate that is lower if you wish. Madam Mayor, public comment?
Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the tax rate? Okay. Public comment is closed. Council, any other questions, or I would entertain a motion?
If possible, I'd like to consider having, not before, but just on an ongoing basis, some sort of a holistic report that gives a little bit more of an overview that would take into consideration more than just the tax rate, considering we have a bond election coming up that doesn't have necessarily to do with us, and I appreciate that, but just so that we don't have superficial comparisons between Nacogdoches versus Lufkin rates. I know there are pretty big discrepancies in our homestead exemptions versus those in Lufkin or other municipalities. I'd love to have that considered, as well as like a valuation, average, mean, median, something along those lines to give us a little bit deeper dive. That way when we get asked by constituents why our tax rates are so high, we can give them a little bit better answer than they just are, because we've got to meet the budget. Is there something along those lines that we could do in the next month, 2 months?
Absolutely, if that's what the council wants. We can certainly do that. Does anyone object? to that being done?
No,
Not a bit.
I think that would be fine.
Okay.
So we do need is there any other comments or questions?
No.
Okay, then we do need a motion. And-
That I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 61.69 cents per $100 valuation, which is effectively a 6.81% increase in the tax rate.
Yes, sir.
$0.6169 per $100 valuation,
Okay.
which is effectively a 6.81% increase in the tax rate.
Need a second,
Oh,
please?
second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Item number 7, consider the ordinance amending Chapter 82 Solid Waste, Article 3, Section 82-31.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to back up and just for the record note that council members Hens, Bowden, Mayor Brophy, and Councilmember Anderson voted for the tax increase, and Councilmember Moore voted no.
Thank you.
On the sanitation collection and disposal, when we did the rate analysis 3 years ago, they recommended that we increase sanitation rates by 5% per year for 3 years. This is that third year, and then after that, we'll go back and we will do another rate analysis. The sanitation fees are pretty voluminous because there are so many different combinations. You've got a copy of the entire ordinance. The entire ordinance was provided on the web for anyone that is interested, but what we end up doing is we look at the residential service, which is the majority as far as numbers where we provide. So the rates would be going for one cart from $23.59 per month to $24.77 per month. And we do have individuals as well as businesses who have carts in the number of 2 or 3, and you can see those rates. Madam Mayor, after public comment, I'll be happy to answer questions for the council.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this? Okay, hearing none. Public comment is closed. Council, any questions before we have a motion? If not, then I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve agenda item 7, amending Chapter 82 Solid Waste, Article 3, Section 82-31.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. If no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Agenda item number 8 is a public hearing. Consider ordinance amending the boundaries of a zoning district within the city of Nacogdoches from agricultural to industrial, heavy industrial for lot 28, et cetera. Mr. Manty, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I have a rezoning case. The applicant wishes to rezone a property located at 3602 Rayburn Drive from Ag to I2, which is the heavy industrial zoning district. The purpose of this rezoning is to allow the applicant to have an auto mechanic, auto repair shop on site. The property currently, this is the area map showing the site in question. It's right at the edge of the city limits on the southern side of the city. And I have a picture here showing an existing structure on site, and the applicant intends to use this building for the mechanic shop or the auto repair shop. I have a map here showing. So let's talk about the current land uses. On the northern side of this property, it's made up of some vacant and industrial uses. On the south is the water treatment plant, the city's water treatment plant, which is an industrial use. And on the eastern and the western side of this property is it's outside the city limits. As you drive along Rayburn Drive, I would say about 90% of the land uses on that street is made up of industrial uses. And so staff believes this rezoning will likely not have any impact on surrounding existing land uses. I have a map on the screen showing the zoning map, and per the zoning map, it is zone ag. This is one of the annexed areas, and per our annexation policies, the city actually designates ag zoning for newly annexed areas. It doesn't necessarily mean the area in question is being used for agricultural purposes. And like I said earlier, as you drive along the street, you will see more of industrial uses. I believe Pilgrim's Pride has a plant out there. The city's plant is also out there, which is the water treatment plants and some other industrial uses. So when planning considered the surrounding zoning, we believe rezoning to I2 would not likely impact the surrounding zoning, because if you look at the northern part of this property, it's bounded by the I2 zoning, and the applicant also owns the parcel right on the north of this property, and so if the zoning has any effect, it's going to affect the applicant himself. So I don't think this rezoning would have any impact on surrounding zoning in the area, since the area is already inhabited by industrial users. The future land use calls for this area to be vacant, and per the 2003 comprehensive land use, some areas were designated as vacant to allow allow future users to be determined by current trends. So with the current trends, as you drive along the street, it's all industrial uses, and so staff believes that rezoning this to the heavy manufacturing will fit the future land use. As you can see on the map, a portion of this property already lies within the heavy industrial uses, and so we believe it's in line with what a comprehensive plan calls for this area. I have a map here showing the floodplain map. Per the city floodplain map, a greater portion of this property lies within the 100-year floodplain. And just for records, this is a zoning application. And as whether this zoning is approved or not, regardless, staff will always make sure every development goes according to our subdivision and floodplain requirements. So if this rezoning is approved today, the applicant would have to meet all the floodplain requirements, the building inspection requirements, and any other developmental requirement to make sure this development is done in accordance to safety, health, and any other requirement that will ensure that every development on site will not have any effect on other surrounding users. But for the zoning purposes, I thought I should show the floodplain map just to let the council and the citizens know that this property falls within the 100-year floodplain. I have a picture here showing the property on site. It looks like, and this is just my observation, the building is a little bit elevated than the surrounding ground. And once we get into the next stage, the applicant will have to prove to the city with regards to the floodplain as to whether they need to elevate this property and per floodplain requirement ordinance. And I have the city engineer here if we need any clarifications on that. I have a picture showing the northern part of the property, and that is owned by the same applicant. And so if this rezoning has any impact, it's going to impact the applicant himself. I have a property showing the southern sector of this site, which is the city's water treatment plant. I have a picture showing the west vacant land with some uses, and then on the eastern side of it, which is outside the city limits, there are some buildings, some residences out there with shops behind them. A street view of Rayburn Drive on the screens, a street view of Rayburn Drive, and as you can see in the picture, it's inhabited by lots of industrial users. More industrial users being shown in pictures. And this is the entrance to the Pilgrims Pride facility along the Rayburn Drive. So the key points to know is that the ag is zoned for agricultural use, and it's basically for newly annexed areas. The heavy industrial zone would allow for the auto-related commercial development, which the current zoning does not. And the area is primarily made up of industrial uses with some pockets of residential development. So going back to the zoning map, I'd like to stress on the fact that this is a rezoning application. And once it gets to the next stage, the city will, this development will go through all the subdivision regulations, floodplain permitting, and anything that would make sure that every development on site will not have any adverse impact on surrounding users on site. This is my presentation to an end. I'll be open to questions and the public hearing.
Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing, so is there someone here that would like to speak against this zoning change? Yes, ma'am. How are you?
I'm Vicki Linnell. Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm really concerned about putting a heavy industrial or an auto repair shop that has oil and things that would be harmful to water in a floodplain. These 100-year floods are coming pretty often these days. I've seen Pecan Park underwater just in the last few years, at least twice in the last maybe 3, 4, 5 years. And it may not be an auto repair shop forever. And so what are we leaving it open to then? And it looks like most of the property is in the floodplain, and it backs up to the creek. So I'm really concerned about what how you intend to keep our water clean.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak against the zone change? Okay, is there anyone here that would like to speak for the zone change? Yes, would you like to say a couple words?
My name's David Singleton, and I own that property. I mean, the flood zone is, I guess, the biggest concern. 90% of the property around it is just about commercial already. If you had the site plan, please. That one's good. That one, no, the other one. Okay. If you look at that property, just behind it on the right corner, which would be the northwest corner, there's a city manhole there. That manhole used to be 3 feet in the air when I bought that property in 92. Back behind it in the left corner, way back there was another manhole about 5 foot up in the air. International Paper burned down in 1983, and they put a couple of 100,000 tons of concrete in that low spot, which I believe they said the floodplain was established in 73. But when I bought that property, it had willow trees a foot in diameter, and I mean hundreds of thousands of tons of busted up concrete. It's all been beat down, broke down, leveled out. The trees have all been cut and burned, and where the front corner here on the east end is setting, like where that travel trailer is, which was just left there by my niece just for a place to park it. It's not there anymore, I've noticed yesterday. But anyway, that corner there is not in a floodplain. We looked at the floodplain map the other day, so the rest of the land had been brought up to that elevation, and actually it's all been brought up a little bit more. We are not looking to enlarge the building in any shape, form, or fashion. It's just, like I said, I built it in 2003, and at that time frame it was not in city property and limits. If you look back behind it, there's an old sycamore tree, and that tree is about 3-4 foot lower than slab level, and that's where all the land used to be. But that land, I mean, it can be surveyed, but it will probably find that it is already out of the floodplain. But other than that, I have nothing to say.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
About a little over a year ago, we rezoned the property at 3412 and 3416 Rayburn Drive, and if I'm correct, and I'm talking from memory here, Mr. Anderson was not here at the time, that the applicant agreed to not include the portion of the land that was in the floodplain in the rezoning, but only to rezone the part that was out of the floodplain, thus allowing him to do everything he wanted to do. But we have pretty lax floodplain regulations here. And while I understand that you're not going to build in the floodplain, if we rezone it at this point, who knows what will happen in the future. Would you be opposed to restricting the zoning change to only the area outside of the floodplain?
I'm not understanding what you said y'all had a meeting on last year about.
Yeah, we had a case on, I guess that would be June 20th, in which we rezoned the property
No,
real
y'all
close.
annexed it into the city limits, maybe?
And then we rezoned it, I believe, didn't we?
I've never applied for a rezone.
No,
of
not
any
you,
kind.
you. It was another person, another
I've owned
property.
that property since 1992, so
Okay.
that particular piece, that half acre, 2 acres right there. Now, my brother owns the half an acre that the house is on.
Okay,
That's documented over, he owns that, I don't know, so I don't know about that. But that right there, that's never been applied for any kind of zone change.
right. It was another property. And I don't even know who the owner was. It was, the address was 3412 and 3416 Rayburn.
That would probably be up closer to the old fertilizer plant
Right.
that the Bailey's on, but I have no knowledge on this
The,
whatsoever.
the bottom line is that would you be opposed to only rezoning the portion of the property that is not inside of the floodplain, but leaving the part in the floodplain, the current zoning?
Not at this moment, I don't think I would. If
You
it
wouldn't be
ca-
opposed to it, or you
Wait,
wouldn't
wait,
want
wait. Restate your question, please.
Would you be so right now, the whole property is being rezoned?
Correct, there's 2 acres there.
Right, and so what I was asking you, would you be opposed to only rezoning the portion of the property that is not in the floodplain and leaving the part that's in the floodplain, the current agricultural zoning?
I don't think that would be a good idea.
Okay.
Would you be opposed to offering not to have any development, like maybe offering a buffer at the
Okay.
creek?
One thing you have to realize, I told y'all about this sewer main that runs across the corner of it, behind it. You can't develop that anymore. I mean, we'd be encroaching on top of the sewer main. So when that's against the law. I mean, we can't do that to start with. You've got a 36 by 60 building there, and I have no intentions of ever building onto it. 30 years down the road, you can't ever tell. But there again, anything that was done would be done through the city inspections and building office and through permits, because it is incorporated city of Nacogdoches now. But there's no standing desires to do anything to it. Like I said, we can't go this way, and to go this way is, like I say, is in a floodplain. So it would have to be elevated up and brought up above the floodplain to do anything. And then there again, we'd have to apply for a building permit. And so we'd have to file all of I mean, I'm a plumbing contractor. I understand all these things. So I understand what it takes to do things. And so, but I think it all needs to be under the same zoning.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak for this? Okay, public hearing is now closed. Council, any questions for Mr. Mann? And if not, the chair will entertain a motion.
Well, I'm making a motion to approve amending the boundaries of zoning district from agricultural to I-2 heavy industrial for lot 28, city block 59, 3602 Rayburn Drive.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'll just say I won't support the motion because I think we should keep the zoning as agricultural in the floodplain, because our floodplains regulations aren't stringent enough. And we also set a precedent back on 6/2017 where we did that on an adjacent or very close property. So it's treating 2 properties with the same set of facts in a different way, and that's not something I support doing.
Any other comments? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, motion passes. Item number 9, consider agreement between the City of Nacogdoches and the Nacogdoches Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Madam Mayor, this is the renewal of the CVB contract. There have been no changes other than dates. CVB receives 72.5%, and they're responsible for leading the tourism and convention efforts within the community. We've estimated that 72.5% is going to amount to $544,000. If it's less, they receive 72.5% of whatever's less, and if it's more, they receive 72.5% of any increase. And so that 743 is a guesstimate, and then they have to work with that number as to what it actually is based on collections. Madam Mayor, I'll be happy to answer any questions after public comment.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the contract between the city and the Convention and Visitors Bureau? Okay, hearing none. Council? If there are no questions, Chair would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the contract between the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the City of Nacogdoches.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. If no further questions or discussion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. And agenda item number 10, consider the agreement between the City of Nacogdoches and Keep Nacogdoches Beautiful for annual funding in return for providing necessary staff, volunteer support, technical and educational expertise to further recycling programs and beautification within the city.
Madam Mayor, City Council, Keep Nacogdoches Beautiful agreement is a renewal of the existing agreement, no changes other than the dates. They're responsible for serving as the city's educational division for recycling, beautification, and then education, more so in our public schools. They do receive a checkoff on the utility bills. That number has been declining over the years. This past year, it generated only about $4,000. And then they also receive $24,000 a year. That money comes from the sanitation fund. So they really do operate on quite a minimal budget. The most significant thing that they've done is that they have served as the source for identifying money for the baler that will be going in at the landfill and will be operational soon. Madam Mayor, happy to answer any questions after public comment.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to speak about the agreement with Keep Nacogdoches Beautiful? Yes, Brandy.
Brandy Cartwright. And I think as a citizen, it's really great that we have the option to be able to donate through the city to such a great organization. I mean, they do a lot for our city, and I think we should continue that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Council, if no further questions for Mr. Jeffers, Chair would entertain a motion.
I do have one quick question
Yes,
for
go
Mr.
right ahead.
Jeffers. You mentioned that the revenues from the checkoff on the water bills has been declining. My question is, and maybe I have missed it, but I pay my water bill online. Is there an option, or do we have the option to add that to the online payment system?
There has not been an option to online. That's part of the reason for the decline. Ms. Curbo, do we have the option to add that now?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can check and see if it's something that's new now that we can add.
You know, we can add it at a cost, and so we'll identify
Okay.
what that cost
I
would
know
be to add
an
that
increasing
feature.
number of people pay the bill online, and
Exactly.
that might be a way to offset the drop in the paper bill contributions to K&B.
Good point.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. If not, we need need a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we pass agenda item number 10.
I second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. We pass agenda item number 10 as presented. If no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. And item number 11, we're going to consider the approval of a planned termination agreement by and between the City of Nacogdoches, Nacogdoches County Hospital District, and the Texas Municipal Retirement System. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor Brophy, council members. Good evening. Jeff Davis, City Attorney. It's my very great honor to appear before you this evening and hopefully to bring some good news not only to the City of Nacogdoches but also to Nacogdoches Memorial Hospital, to the hospital district. And that good news is in the form of a planned termination agreement that be by and between the city, the hospital district, and the Texas Municipal Retirement System. I will try not to drone on too long. I know if I do that a certain person to my right, your left, will probably toss something in my direction, but I thought maybe a brief history of how we arrived at where we are with this potential agreement might help just a little bit. Back in 1950, the city passed an ordinance and entered into a participation ordinance to participate in the Texas Municipal Retirement System. And that created what's been known over the years through the system, and here with the city is Plan 1. If we move forward to 1959, a second participation ordinance was passed, which created Plan 2, and what that did was that allowed the employees of what was then the City Memorial Hospital, which I don't know if anybody said that in the council chambers in a long time, for those employees to participate also in the Texas Municipal Retirement System. And that's been known as Plan 2. If we move forward on this timeline to 1967, the Texas legislature actually created the hospital district, what we know today. And in 1968, there was an ordinance that actually transferred the assets from the city to this new district. As time has gone on, historically the Plan 1, the original plan, and then the Plan 2 that's been administered by the Texas Municipal Retirement System have been treated as two different plans, although during that period the employees of the hospital that were then city employees participated in Plan 2, and the city made contributions to that plan up until the time of this transfer in 1968. Prior to May 2016, that's exactly how this was administered. But in May 2016, the last person that participated in that Plan 2 no longer participated. And so where did that leave us? Well, it left us with these two different plans. And although there were no further contributions being made to Plan 2, there were no further or existing employees that were in Plan 2, no additional liabilities on Plan 2, it was still there. And as of the end of last year, 2017, the amount of the plan balance for Plan 2 was $2,256,116. And so that left a situation of how should this money be distributed? Where should this money go? So that began kind of a journey of research. I know that here at the city that we researched to find whatever documents we could, and I've looked at documents going all the way back to 1950, and we've looked at the 1968 available documents. We even tried to look at some of Moss Adams, the longtime wonderful city attorney for 30 years or so, of his files of what he might have. The retirement system endeavored to find documents as well. Jerry Baker, counsel for the hospital, did the same thing. So after we looked and we looked under rocks and found every document we had and could find, and did an analysis, legal analysis of those documents, done by myself, also counsel for the hospital, as well as the TMRS counsel, we were able to come up with the following determination. And that is, if we look at the whole history of contributions from the city, and then what, once the hospital district was created, what would they have participated, or what have they contributed as well? It kind of came down to this. From 1968 or 1969 to 1973, even after the city transferred the assets of the hospital over to the district, there continued to be participation, payment by employees, and contributions by an entity. I couldn't tell you exactly what entity that is, but an entity continued to make those contributions. It may well have been the city, it may well have been the hospital district, or it may well have been both. And so in this legal analysis, when we look at this and we look at the history and we look at the contributions of the entities to this Plan 2, to this fund, in addition to what the employee contributions were, we come to the conclusion, and we're able to come to the conclusion, that approximately 9.75% of the overall fund balance was contributed during that period from essentially 68, 69 to 73. So the remainder of that, the 90% or 90.25%, was made by the city. And so we looked at the TMRS Act, we looked at available sources, we looked at the documents, we looked at the payment history and everything we could analyze, and we came to the conclusion that what would appear to be the fairest, what would be based on the Act and on contribution histories, the proper result would be for a distribution of those funds of the 9.75% of the $2,256,116 to the hospital district for that period when they took over and assumed the assets to that 73 period, with the remainder 90+% going to the hospital. So if we look at those numbers, what does that mean? What does that come out to at the end of the day? What is the distribution amount? So what this would mean, should you approve this settlement agreement, and it would settle any and all, not that there's any controversy because everybody's worked together. This has been a really collaborative effort, and I appreciate that spirit very much. Would settle the distribution fully and finally, and it would result in the Nacogdoches Hospital District receiving $219,971.31, with the remaining fund balance being credited to our Plan Number 1 in TMRS system to the tune of $2,036,144.61. So that would be the division. How will that money be distributed? That's important to know, and I had a very good question on that from the mayor, is that the $219,000 and change, almost $220, will be paid directly from the system to the hospital district, and they can utilize those funds as they see fit. Those won't be obligated. However, under Section 855.319 of the TMRS Act, if you can't sleep tonight, whip that thing out. It dictates, because we have ongoing employees, ongoing obligations, ongoing contributions, that those monies, the $2 million, must go to satisfy those outstanding obligations. But that, in turn, I think brings additional good news for the city. Nobody's ever accused me of being an actuarial. However, based on information that we've received from TMRS and some numbers that they've run by their actuarials, it appears that should this be approved, and should this $2 million plus amount be moved over as a lump sum to help fund what I believe are known as unfunded actuarial accrual liabilities. If I said that right.
Go ahead and explain it.
No, I'm not going to, but I'm going to tell you what that is, although if you'd like me to, I did get a cheat sheet on that. But in any event, won't bore you with that or belabor the point any more to say that if we do that, those UAAL amounts will pay off 11 years early. And so I think in going through some of the charts, I think instead of paying off, say, around 2035, or 2046 or 2047, it'll pay off around 2035 if we continue to make the contributions at our pension funding rate at the current amount. And if all that is done, it will result in a savings to the city of almost $5 million, $4.8 million. So with that, I'm out of soap. Mayor, I will step to the side. If there are any questions after public comment, I'll certainly endeavor to answer those.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Is there anyone here that would like to comment? Okay. Not? Council? Any questions or clarifications?
I just got a question.
Yes,
Are
sir.
we relatively assured that there is no one else remaining in Act 2?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think there's been a very diligent effort made by TMRS, and they are fantastic in what they do. And I would be remiss if I did not thank Christine Sweeney, who's counsel for TMRS. She's done tremendous work on this and researching the matter. David Gavia has also been wonderful and very helpful. We're certainly aware of anybody. Matter of fact, I think, and this is not based on anything legally that I can rely on, but my interpretation of all of this is, I believe it was May 2016 when the last person passed, you know, and so that ended the pool of people that could participate. That there was some time, and I'm sure analysis, just to make sure that there was not anybody else that might be able to participate. And if you think about it, if the last contribution made by some entity, whether it's a city or hospital or both, was in 1973, a few years have passed since that time. It's a good question.
Yeah. Is there a short answer to?
That's terribly hurtful.
How did you determine the amount of money that went to the hospital?
Well, that's a good question, and there was, you know, a lot of analysis on that. And once again, Christine did a beautiful job. You know, we weighed in, I weighed in. Jerry Baker also, I'd like to thank Jerry Baker and Travis Clardy and his firm for their work. We met multiple times on this, and I know they've done a great deal of analysis on this on behalf of the hospital. But with regard to that when we talked a little bit about that 9.75%, and that was the figure, the percentage that was used against the total fund balance to determine what would be distributed to the hospital district, that 9.75, essentially the numbers, you know, it's a dangerous thing for me to talk about numbers. It's when I went to law school. But with regard to 1973, when you looked at that total fund balance at that time, I think, I'm just trying to remember this off the top of my head, but the monies that were in there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 114,000 or so. If you back it up to that end of 1968, 1969, when we know everything was transferred over, we know up to that point that the city had made those employer contributions, it came out to that 90.25%. And so that's how that percentage came to be of the 9.75 that's being paid to the hospital. That's the multiplier used against the whole fund balance.
Any other questions?
That's really complicated. I had a question. Did
Yes,
we hire any outside professionals in this process?
No, sir.
Congratulations.
Well, thank
That's really hard. I mean, that must have been hard to track all that down and figure it out from all that historical data. So
Well,
that was not easy.
Well, I can tell you there was a tremendous amount of help, and Madam Secretary, thank you for helping run down things. Meredith Fleming was tremendously helpful. Jan Robertson in my office or with the city was very helpful, and checked all the way back to Moss Adams and to Rob Atherton's firm, and a lot of folks did the heavy lifting. I just had the fun part of telling you about $2 million hopefully coming our way.
There we go.
So thank you, but I appreciate that. But the credit goes to all those other folks and to TMRS and their folks. Did a fantastic job.
Okay. If nothing else, Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agreement.
I move to approve item number 11.
Okay.
I second that.
Moved and seconded to approve item number 11 as presented. If no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. And now we're going to return to our consent item C, awarding a contract for water chemicals. And, oh, Mr. Allen, come on up. I believe Mr. Moore had some questions.
Yes. Really, I did a little bit of research. I don't know this much, but the bottom line is we're using, I believe, I wrote it down and then I forgot to bring the paper. Is it aluminum sulfate that we're using as our flocculant creator? So the question I have is so basically what that does is it is used to remove suspended solids from the water. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so the question I have is, does that, obviously it changes water flow. In the summer, we're going to be using more of that material as we're using more water, given the constant concentration of suspended solids. But the question I have is, do we see a response from when there's a heavy rainstorm, thus a bunch of erosion from the streams and runoff from the agriculture areas, that there's a greater concentration of suspended solids in the water?
I'll say somewhat yes. I mean, your lake gets a little more turbulent. We have a lot more runoff. But we're staying pretty consistent with what we order.
Okay.
On that particular chemical. We're running about an order every 2 weeks.
Right. And do we have a sense of what the what's the word? Would you call it turbidity, or what would turbidity? What would you? How would you compare or do we know what the turbidity of the water flowing into the lake versus the turbidity of the water flowing out of the lake into our intake structure? Do we have a sense of those numbers?
As opposed to what we're taking in at the intake and what's coming in from flow from rainfall and whatnot.
Right, because over a period of time, I mean, what's happening is it's settling out in the lake.
Yes, it is.
And I'm wondering, all lakes lose capacity over time, and so I'm trying to get to a point using this as a method to talk about that. Do we have the information to kind of talk about how that volume is changing, and what the turbidity of the water coming in is like? Because if there's a lot of people doing a lot of row cropping upstairs, or there's literally dozens of gas wells all around there, and each one of those had bulldozers and roads created, and I'm wondering if we have any sense of how much in effect dirt is coming into the lake.
And that's an excellent question, and I do not have an answer for it at this time. That is something that we probably should be looking into.
Okay.
Because we are losing capacity. Okay. How much? We don't know.
Well, anyway, that was I wanted to use I wanted to use this as an opportunity to ask that question. I mean, it's not really about the chemicals, but the chemical is what we're using to remove those.
It's an excellent observation.
So, okay, that was the only question I had.
Any public comment, or do you want me to go on with the?
Is there anyone here that would like to say anything? No, I believe it was pulled just to answer his questions.
Yeah.
Right.
So unless
step
there's
aside
something
and-
you feel like you need to add? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then Chair will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve item 4C, award for bulk chemicals for the water utilities.
I'll second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. If no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. It is now 6:32, and we are going to go into executive session. If you don't want to wait, I understand, but thank you for attending tonight's meeting.